Dolny Kubín is a beautiful jewel of the Orava region that welcomes all with open arms. Set in the wonderful surroundings of the Orava highlands on both sides of the river Orava, Dolny Kubín is endowed with natural surroundings that belong among the most beautiful in Europe. It's embraced by 5 mountain ranges. In addition to the Orava highlands, these are the picturesque Kubínská Hola, part of the Oravská Magura, the monumental Lesser Fatras, the romantic Great Fatras, and the majestic tops of the KAJ mountains with its predominant peak, Great KAJ. Great KAJ, one of the most beautiful Slovak summits, is among the most picturesque natural sites in Central Europe. From its top, it provides wonderful views of the beauty of the Orava and Liptov regions in Slovakia. The waters of the Orava River bring greetings to Dolny Kubín from all over the Orava region. From its surface, we can see reflected the wild and romantic beauty of the peaks in the shadow of the Mounts Babja and Ostrý Roháč. In Dolny Kubín, the Orava River elegantly flows along the meander in Bziny, caresses Trniny Hill, Brezovec and Kuzmínovo, in order to welcome with sublime respect the waters of Jasenovský stream, which flows from the region where 3 great Slovak personalities, Zmeškal, Hviezdoslav and Kukučín, were raised. After being decorated by the splendidness of the Kráľovanské Valley, the Orava River then flows into the Vach River with an immaculate, virginal and pure beauty. Its waters bring the message of the beauty of Dolny Kubín and the Oravian area to Slovakia, garnished with noble music and beautiful Slovak poetry. Dolny Kubín is on the crossroads of European routes that connect the Baltics with the Balkans, as well as with Central Europe and the Apennines. Through its location, the town is the ideal starting point for tourists who visit the extraordinary Orava region, in order to breathe a little history, learn about the present, but also to gain new energy from Mother Nature's womb. Dolny Kubín has always been at the crossroads of routes which were already known in ancient times. Historians could certainly lecture ad infinitum about the first colonializations of the area of today's Dolny Kubín. However, many things would remain hidden, buried under myriad layers of history. Records from the traces of the oldest settlement from the Kubín region go back to the Eneolithic, to the later period of the Stone Age, approximately 3,000 years before Christ. During this period, a population settled at the top of Trniny Hill, where they developed a civilization referred to by archaeologists as the Baden culture, that is today preserved through pottery relics. A considerably denser settlement can be seen in both the Young and the Late Bronze Age, when the Orava region was colonialized by the Lusatian culture. 2 important graveyards of Lusatian culture were researched by archaeologists directly in Dolny Kubín. In 2 Lusatian graves, many valuable archaeological materials were found, including several kinds of pottery, needles, a razor, a knife, as well as rings made from bronze and other materials. In the period before the Great Moravian Kingdom, there were fortifications on the hills of Trniny and Ostrá Skala, over Vyšný Kubín. It was in these days that the Slavs came to our region, colonializing the former settlements of the Puchov culture and adapting them to their needs. The settlements in the surroundings of Kubin were never quiet for long periods due to the old merchant route known in Europe as Magna Via, the Great Road. The oldest written record of Kubin dates back to the year 1314 in the list of Master Doncha made during the designation of the borders of Vyshny Kubin. During the following division of Kubin into Vyshny, which means upper, and Dolny, which means lower, Vyshny Kubin continued to develop as a provincial village and Dolny Kubin remained within the royal estate. Its inhabitants were not only farmers and herdsmen, but also craftsmen, merchants and servants of the nearby Oravian castle. At the beginning of the 17th century, Dolny Kubin was devastated by the Haiduks of Istvan Bochkai, who fought against the paladin Juraj Turzo. Of the village, which was set on fire, only 7 houses remained, 4 of them damaged. A boundary stone in the history of Dolny Kubin is from the year 1632, when the Oravian overlord Count Gaspar Ileshhazy established Dolny Kubin as a town and licensed it to organize 2 annual fairs as well as weekly markets on Sundays. The royal prerogative dictated that the inhabitants of Dolny Kubin must, under the threat of a penalty, build only beautiful and sightly houses and to restore the municipal hospital and school. The town started to change more significantly after the year 1683, when after the burning of the neighboring village of Velichna, it was decided that it would become the governmental seat. In 1650, the mayor of Dolny Kubin, Jan Radlinski, sent an order to Krakow to make the first town chronicles bound in leather with a metal swage. For a long 222 years, the chronicles have recorded ownership transfers, municipal papers and contracts with different types of calligraphy. The people of the small town under the Great KAJ were oppressed not only by brutal soldiers, but also by poor harvest years, famines and plagues. At the beginning of the 18th century, Dolny Kubin had about 350 inhabitants, approximately as much as 100 years ago. However, to the end of the century, the population grew 5 times. Gradually, through the 19th century, the reputation of Dolny Kubin grew among the Slovaks. Many significant personalities who contributed to the development of Slovak culture and education were born or were active in the town under the majestic KAJ. One of those is undoubtedly Janko Matuška, the author of the Slovak anthem. Pavol Orsak Hviezdoslav, the greatest Slovak poet, the doctor and writer Ladislav Nadaši Jege, as well as the priest and important national figure Andrej Radlinski. The town also remained the cultural center of the Orava region after the formation of the Czechoslovak Republic. After World War II, there was a growth in construction activities. New flats were built as well as public buildings and industrial factories. An important period for Dolny Kubin began in 1960, when after many years it became again the capital of the whole Orava region. The changes in the social and political situation in the years after 1989 were visible in Dolny Kubin as well. The construction of the winter sports stadium was finished. In the central part of the old town, the City Park Hotel was built, which is affiliated with the construction of the Colonnades Bridge, unique in Slovakia, for the use of pedestrians over the Orava River. Modifications were also made in the area of Martin Kukucin Park and Square. The extraordinary binary clock has become a curiosity of Freedom Square. The central part of the residential area of Brezovec now has a new landmark, the rising of the Holy Cross Church. In modern times, up to 20,000 inhabitants have found their home in Dolní Kubín. Dolní Kubín consists of 10 residential areas: Banisko, Beňová Lehota, Brezovec, Kňažia, Malý Bistěrec, Medzihradné, Mokrať, Staré Mesto, Velký Bistěrec and Zaskalje. The villages Jelšava and Srňacie belong to the town as well. In this town, the present is uniting with history. The former servants' village developed over time to be the historical, economic, cultural as well as sports center of the Orava region. The architecture of the different centuries is completed by islands of municipal greenery in the center of the town, as well as gardens and parks in the suburbs. An important part of the social and economical development of Dolní Kubín is the project of the barrier-free town. The elimination of barriers for handicapped people, the elderly or parents with children makes their daily movement in town easier. It offers a brighter variety of possibilities to handicapped visitors of Dolní Kubín to get to know the secrets of the town below the dominant Great KAJ. The main urban side of Dolní Kubín is its town square. Developing gradually, it didn't have its present size and look during the Middle Ages. It had to wait for 2 devastating fires at the end of the 19th century to develop the look of today. Probably the most interesting history can be found in the building of the county house, which was used in the past as the seat of the Oravian authority. On the facade, in between the first and the second floor over the main entrance into the building, there is a sandstone relief set in polychrome depicting the heraldry of the Orava region from the 18th century. Currently, the building serves as the Orava Art Gallery. The stock of the collection includes 8 artistic disciplines with up to 7,800 artistic pieces, and it belongs among the most significant public gallery institutions in Slovakia. Furthermore, the Orava Art Gallery regularly organizes contemporary short-term expositions in 4 exposition rooms. In the 19th century, the Roman Catholic Church of St. Catherine Alexandriska was built on the top of the foundations of the first church in Dolny Kubin. The interiors were painted and restored by the Slovak Art Workshop. The Protestant Cathedral of the Confession of Augsburg was built in 1893-1894 on the site of the Tolerationist church, which was destroyed by fire. The church was painted by Anton Bodnar according to the design of Jan Hala. In 1906, the number of monumental and functional buildings was increased by the construction of the Chaplovich Library. The Pavol Orsak Hviezdoslav section at the Oravian Museum in Dolny Kubin itself belongs among the most precious historical and scientific libraries in Slovakia. The scientific library is a testimony to the lifetime collection efforts of Vavrinec Chaplovich, who managed to acquire the most precious literary works from the 15th to the mid-19th century. The building of the Chaplovich Library is closely connected with the Literature Museum of Pavol Orsak Hviezdoslav in Dolny Kubin, the oldest literature museum in Slovakia. The exposition in 3 rooms offers insights into the life and artistic creation of the poet Hviezdoslav, the largest phenomenon in Slovak poetry from the turn of the 20th century. The text and picture material is completed by personal items from the poet's estate. In the residential district of Zaskalje, we find an old preserved building from the first half of the 18th century. At the turn of the 19th century, in the nearby district of Mokrať, a small Baroque chapel was built inside a Renaissance chateau by its new owner, a Buffy. Even today, in the municipal district of Kňažia, there are masses held in a stone Baroque church, which was built on the site of the old wooden church. The older Empire-style chateau stands in the district of Malý Bysterec. Until recently, more traditional houses from the 19th century were preserved in Dolny Kubin. Remarkable is the reconstructed dye house at Kohutový Sad Park, where the writer and cultural worker Theo Herkel Florin lived. A reminder of its time is also carried by the Jewish cemetery, where we can find graves from the 18th century. In these days, Jews held important positions in Dolny Kubin, further confirmed by the construction of the synagogue. Several monuments are dedicated to the victims of wars. From other memorials, we learn that significant personalities from Slovak culture were born or were active here, several of whom have found their final resting place in the town under the Great Khotch. The immense potential of Dolní Kubín comes from the history of the town, its natural environment, from the preserved expressions of traditional folklore, from the heritage of historical and contemporary personalities, but also from the rich tradition of organizing numerous cultural and social events. Dolní Kubín is distinguished as the center of the Slovak poetry competition, Hviezdoslav Kubín, which already enjoys a long tradition.
Spýtal sa riaditeľ vyvaľujúc oči na prázdne decko. Na môj chrbát. Dievča sa obrátilo a riaditeľ nahlas kričal.
The international Bohdan Varchal music competition for string instruments, called Talents for Europe, is an opportunity for young hopeful virtuosos from all over Europe. A popular part of this event is the so-called Violino Arvensis, a meeting of instrument makers, musicians, pedagogues and violin lovers. During the international masterclasses called Musica Arvensis, Slovak and foreign music students come regularly to Dolní Kubín in order to improve their music performance skills under the guidance of important pedagogues. Further regular cultural events include the Ivan Balla Music Festival, attracting dozens of young artists and concert maestros, gathering every year in order to simply feel and share the wonderful music and atmosphere, where the spirit reigns over the body. The rich cultural calendar of Dolní Kubín also includes the festivals of the Folklore Day of Kubín, the Musical Spring of Kubín, the so-called Palette of Bohuň, and the dance festival Dancing Kubín. Once a year, merchants and craftsmen attract hundreds of visitors to the old city center. The traditional fair of Dolní Kubín is an inseparable part of the 3-day-long cultural and social marathon called Days of Dolní Kubín, which is a colorful program for people of all ages. Today, Dolny Kubin is a lively, developing town with a lot of possibilities for comfortable living and abundant leisure activities. In addition to culture and sports, there is a good foundation for tourism. The town itself is bordered by the forests of Kuzminov, Krnachov, Trniny, Brezovec and Horice. The separate municipal districts are adjacent to the forests of Kubinska Hola, the Orova Highland and the Great Koj, offering a range of opportunities to engage in active relaxation for the inhabitants as well as for visitors of Dolny Kubin. The Orova River, which is listed in the Ramsarsky Register of internationally important wetlands, runs straight through the town. Magic corners and quiet pools attract not only sport fishers but also fans of water sports. The well-maintained banks of the Orova River have become a sought-after resort to relax for people of all ages. Dolny Kubin is one of the few places in Slovakia that offers its inhabitants as well as its visitors a colorful variety of possibilities for sport activities directly in town or in its surroundings. Sufficient evidence of this is the soccer stadium with its athletics track, playing fields with artificial grass, tennis courts, several fitness centers and a covered winter sports stadium. The possibilities for active relaxation are completed by the newly constructed Aqua Relax Park with different water attractions and a wellness center. The wide range of tourist tracks and the surrounding mountains, which allow excellent alpine and cross-country skiing, ensure that in the town under the Great Koj not only professional sportsmen will find satisfaction, but also fans of leisure time sport. Dolny Kubin is the starting point for tourism in the Orovska Magura mountain range, including the Kubinska Hola, one of the most sought-after skiing resorts in Slovakia. The well-maintained ski areas, set in the magnificent nature of the Orovska Magura mountains, provide a splendid view of the upper and the lower parts of the Orova region, the Lesser and Western Tatra mountains, the opposing Koj mountains and the Lesser and the Great Fatra mountains. Together, all this offers both tremendous skiing as well as unforgettable adventures in a glorious winterland. Even if Dolny Kubin belongs among the smaller Slovak towns, through its rich and wide offerings, it attracts thousands of visitors every year. The town spreads into the womb of the mountains, offering its many delights to everybody who wants to learn about these extraordinary beauties, which have been praised 100 times by poets and masters of the strings. Its secrets have been researched by scientists, historians, economists and ecologists. All have agreed that this is an extraordinarily attractive, graceful and unique town.